Sorry, I was pressing the wrong button there, as they say. Thanks,
This is
sir. The
the
question I
Minister.
was going to ask earlier of the, and it was relevant because it was the previous Health Minister, was just simply about the proposition. It's a genuine question about understanding where we are. It was just the first part that says, standalone proposition seeking the States Assembly, in principle, in brackets, approval of the funding proposals for delivery. And I just think it's important perhaps that the bringer of the proposition could talk about what sort of depth would be required in terms of, would it simply be a figure? Would it be the actual sources of where the money is coming from? Would it be the detail of what's being spent where, which companies are involved, etc., etc.? Because I think it's important we know what we might well be asking for. So that's an important one. I think I'm right in thinking that the way this will work is that the government plan will be lodged, and then if this is approved, there'll be a debate where possible amendments are, and then we come back to the government plan debate to amend, which may be amended or may not be amended, to look at the funding. So the funding would be in the government plan anyway, which is quite important. My big concern, sir, is just... not often concerned about headlines really, so, or what people think or say, but I think the general public in Jersey, if they read a headline to say, we're going to have another debate on the hospital, may well, I don't know, sir. I know that it will not be something that would be wanted, because if there's any risk to a change to where we're going now, I think there is a real problem. And I think the public perception of that is an important feature before we vote. And I think people need to think as to whether we want those two debates, because it will be two debates, and we may well be accused, and perhaps quite rightly, of further navel gazing over the hospital. And my concerns over the hospital, which were there before, maintained. It was a really difficult situation, and I recognise, and I fully recognise the difficulty of this scrutiny that's involved, particularly in such short order, because the scrutiny panel has only recently been formed. I was part of the other scrutiny panel. I will say that the scrutiny panel previously did produce a report, and recommendation 8, so the government should provide the States Assembly with the full anticipated costs, and I agree with costs for new health service facilities, but ahead of the debate on the proposed government plan. Didn't actually mention another debate before the government plan. There was a recognition that bringing that in the government plan is probably the right thing to do because of the holistic nature of the government plan and their spending plans. And I think unless you put these together, there is a difficulty in knowing where this fits in and where we are. And of course you can amend the government plan. I know previously my colleague here has perhaps been accused of bringing too many amendments to the government plan, but I think amendments to the government plan are brought and they are debated, and they can make changes, and we have, indeed the Island Plan brought a few to that. And that is a very important part of our democracy. So there is a vehicle there for changing. My question would be, what are we going to change? Because I have to say that the previous government, in its iteration, many were supported in their positions because of their plans for the hospital on the doorstep and election time. And now we seem to be again contemplating again those plans that were previously approved and went through. And I think we have to be careful as to how we're going to do that now. And I think we need to be mindful of not delaying. And I recognise the claim that there won't be any delay, but it is a genuine concern, and it's not just mine. I think it's a genuine concern of many people out there. The other thing I would say is that, and I think it was Deputy Joseph who mentioned it, when he mentioned that the now Chief Minister, I believe he was referring to, brought a similar debate. Actually, that debate was P109, and what it brought was a need to produce a report of the comparison of the old project and the new project, but part of that was a report detailing the costs of this hospital. There's a slight irony here that the only people who voted in favour of that report were Reform, the Deputy himself and 3 constables. Everyone else in this Assembly voted against producing that report previously, but we do seem to be being asked now to produce a similar thing, but at the level of a debate. And I can see from those nuances of where we are, why the public might be looking at us and saying, please make your mind up. This isn't about personal conflicts perhaps, or generic conflicts between the Assembly. This is about getting on with a project. And I think we would all say we may well be in a position where we're not in the ideal position here and haven't been for the last 3 or 4 years over the hospital. And I say 3 or 4 years, not just the last government, but the one previously. We've had many debates, many considerations and many iterations of what we're going to go for. We have something now. Whether it will be as we suggest it might turn out will be very interesting to see. Whether we'll end up with Overdale as we originally planned, it will be interesting to see. And that will be for future governments, way beyond where I'll be here in the next 10 years, Lord knows how long, sir. But I would just say that it's for those reasons that I'm struggling to accept yet another debate before the government plan. I would say I agree with the notion that we have to be very transparent in what we're producing, the over costs and what's going to be built, and that's a very important thing for us to consider. But to go through a separate debate, I'm not entirely sure what we're going to achieve with that debate, that can't be achieved through good scrutiny, that can't be achieved by a good process, through the scrutiny process and states members. Perhaps it can't be achieved through regular briefings of states members as to where we are, and I hope they will happen. Can't be achieved through much more cooperation across this Assembly in terms of where we are, because we do seem to have an agreement that this is the project that we're all going for. That's what was agreed by the previous government and this one. So that's just my question here as to whether an extra debate is really necessary. I don't think this needs to be a toxic debate on this. I think it's a simple, do you want an extra debate or we go for the government plan? In my mind, I'm happy to go for the government plan as long as there's enough information beforehand and remind members that amendments can come. And can I just add, sir, there is a really important piece of work for scrutiny here, and I know this because I've done it myself, that the detail of what's coming forward, and the panel will be briefed and have a greater insight as to what's going on in most states members. And so producing an interim report, as the previous Our Hospital panel did, I would ask scrutiny, speaking as a member of this Assembly now, I would ask scrutiny to bring interim reports forward. That, I think, is a vehicle for gathering that information and making clear recommendations and putting that information together before the government plan. Part of that will be funding, but there are other issues that need to be addressed, sir, in terms of the hospital as we move forward. So, to conclude, as they say, sir, I will not be supporting this unless there's a very, very powerful argument in favour of it, because I believe that the government plan is a vehicle enough, and I think there is a really important role for scrutiny as we go forward, communication from the department and the ministers in terms of what's happening, rather than us yet again spending time debating with perhaps no outcomes other than we already are where we are, or some amendments that may well delay this entire process. And so I don't think any of us want to get to the end of this term and have this delayed anymore. So I leave my view on that, and it's up to members to make their views on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this proposition? I call upon Deputy Brenner to reply.
Thank you, sir. As I went for lunch, I was given a piece of very wise advice. I should say that, strangely, it didn't come from a states member, but I shall follow convention and not name them, although you can avail yourself of the same advice if you go to the tea room. That advice was, you've got to laugh at life. You've got to laugh at life. Very good advice, I would say. However, as it applies to this debate, I have to say the best that I can manage is a wry smile. There's a wry smile at the extraordinary contortions various members have gone through to argue against something which, up until recently, they believed in completely. And a wry smile at the slightly breathtaking contradictions in some of the arguments that have been presented to argue against this proposition. and a wry smile at the zeal with which some members appear determined to throw away their right, you might say obligation, to scrutinise government expenditure, not least the single biggest item of expenditure that this Assembly will ever approve. I'll start with Deputy Mesick's comments because they also prompted a wry smile. The Deputy argued that there might once have been a time for a separate proposition about the funding of the new hospital, but very sadly that time has passed. A wry smile because, in fact, it seems to have passed right around the time he joined the government, which is indeed a strange coincidence. He made the point that the previous government could have brought a proposition during the previous 2 years. Actually, it was 18 months, of course. And it was also open, I note, to the previous scrutiny panel to bring such a proposition. The previous scrutiny panel chaired by, I think, Deputy Mesick. Perhaps the reason he didn't is because the government had promised just such a debate. So it would have been a waste of time. I guess the other wry smile is the contradictions in the argument advanced against the proposition by many members. It goes a bit like this. One argument is that scrutiny through the government plan debate will be entirely adequate. Full and fair scrutiny of the funding proposals will definitely be possible through the government plan debate. There will be absolutely no loss in terms of clarity and focus and openness. There really is no difference between a separate debate and a debate during the government plan. Okay. But on the other hand, the greatest danger if this proposition is passed is that it will slow the project down because we must not jeopardize progress. Everyone wants to just get on with it. But hang on, I thought there was no difference between these two debate options. All the information would be the same. You can't ride both these horses at once. Something is different about a separate proposition. Otherwise, there wouldn't be these slightly blood-curdling fears expressed about the future of the whole project in the event of a separate debate. I must also mention Deputy Mesick's point about the proximity of a debate in the hospital funding to the government plan. I do think this was another hare that was set running, although it doesn't seem to have quite the legs of the one that Deputy Tadier set running yesterday. Because as the bailiff made clear, it is impossible to be definitive because the situation will depend on the actual proposition brought forward and the amendments brought forward, which already takes us deep into the territory of hypotheticals. But what we can say with absolute certainty is that it has been done before. Deputy Luce's proposition was debated less than a month before last year's government plan, and it was then part of the government plan, so it has happened before. I think there was an attempt made to argue that this case is different because Deputy Luce was proposing a change, but it isn't different, it's the same point. There will be new material in the government plan, for example, the funding strategy, which hasn't been presented yet. And I haven't looked at the debates regarding the Our Hospital project, but I'm willing to bet that at least some of those debates were within 3 months of a government plan. I'm going to pick up some other members' points. I apologise if I don't pick up on all of them. I was typing as quickly as I could, but I may have missed some. Deputy Howell said that information will be the same with a separate proposition. Indeed, yes, that's quite likely. It's going to be abstracted if this proposition is successful from the government plan. But that is missing the point. It is the context that will be different. We will have the time and focus, have the time to focus on just one thing. All the information will be gathered in one place. The only amendments up for debate will be related to the proposition. The final speeches after amendments have been debated will also be purely about the hospital. So the debate will be different. It will be different. And indeed, the speeches have made this clear in a kind of backhanded way, as I say, because there is a clear acknowledgement that indeed a separate proposition must be different because there is apparently a terrifying level of political jeopardy if we dare to debate this matter separately. And that brings me to the points made by Deputy Balash and the Minister. The proposition risks delay, and apparently political risk is the top risk attached to the project. Well, possibly. We've had a change of government, so obviously there's a higher level of political risk. I can certainly muster a wry smile as I contemplate the origin of that political risk. What I'm not prepared to do is say that because we've had a change of government, we now all just suspend our normal functions of scrutinising government expenditure. No, sir. What seems to be happening here is the government is saying that a full debate focused only on this issue risks what you might call excessive scrutiny, too much openness, in that it might result in a setback for the project. I would say that expresses a rather great insecurity on the part of the government. Surely they should welcome the chance to provide answers to all the questions members have to deal with, and to deal with amendments that might encapsulate issues that have been raised by the plans, and to deal with criticisms. Churchill said, "Criticism may not be agreeable, but it is necessary. It fulfills the same function as pain in the human body. It calls attention to the development of an unhealthy state of things. If it is heeded in time, danger may be averted. If it is suppressed, a fatal distemper may develop." This criticism cannot and should not be above criticism and interrogation, regardless of how urgent and vital it is, precisely because we want to avoid that kind of situation developing. Openness and transparency are the best safeguard we have to ensure that this project goes forward with full support and without delay. Deputy Scott argued that we should accept previous decisions of the Assembly. I've got another wry smile as I recall the decision taken in December to bring forward a separate funding proposition. I'm all up for accepting that decision. The Health Minister argued that it would be calamitous to provide indicative costs for future elements of the project. I think the Constable of St Clement nailed that pretty comprehensively. We're not asking for everyone to stop work and spend months on it. That's alarmism. As he clearly said, any business will have indicative costs of the likely costs of capital projects in the future. Someone, I can't recall who, I'm afraid, said we shouldn't reopen the debate. The point is, sir, we haven't yet had a debate. That was what was promised. So I have another wry smile when I contemplate an argument that says, don't worry, we'll have a debate, just keep voting money to keep the show on the road, we'll have a set piece debate next year, don't worry. Oh, sorry, we've now gone past the point where it's appropriate to have that level of scrutiny, let's all just move on. That's what's happening here. Deputy Ward is concerned that we're going to have another debate on the hospital. I don't think there's any risk of that. I think it's about funding. And the public fully understand that we will be debating funding. They would expect nothing less, I think. He also asks, well, what are we going to change? Well, we don't know, do we? The government plan hasn't been tabled yet. I can't say. So we can't say what yet, but we do want to have the opportunity to examine that and decide whether there might be something we want to change. It might not be a big thing. It might be that we ask for something to be kept under review, or we ask for more information about something, or something of that kind. I can't say exactly what we would want, but I do think that in any normal circumstance, when you're planning a massive capital project, you would have a debate about it, and you would expect to be kept informed, and you'd expect to have the opportunity for members to have their say. Deputy Ward accepted that there won't necessarily be a delay, but thinks the public will worry about it anyway. Well, I have a little more confidence in our role as a scrutiny panel and the role of this assembly and our ability to explain what we do to nullify that fear. Another way I think of looking at this proposition, sir, is that it shifts the burden of clarity around the debate away from members to the government. If the debate happens in the context of a government plan, the onus will be on the member wishing to raise an issue to provide all the clarity, to find the relevant bits in the government plan, to bring them together, to point members to them, and so on. If the proposition passes, the onus is on the government to explain what information is relevant, to bring it all together in one place, to make the case for it in one place and in one coherent argument. That, I think, is something that we should all welcome. If we accept the argument advanced that if we allow a separate debate, it might slow the project down, I think the effect of that argument is, in practice, perilously close to giving the government a blank check. The logic of that argument is whatever questioning is raised has to be brushed away because of the desire to just get on with it. We all want to get on with it. We all understand the urgency. We all understand the public's desire to get on with it. That does not mean that we should not have a separate debate. It does not absolve us of our responsibilities. We should not live in fear of the public thinking, oh, they're having another debate about the hospital. We're just doing our job. And the simplest way and the clearest way for that job to be done in a way that the public will understand is with a separate debate. I think the government should have more confidence in itself and faith in the good sense of members. We're quite capable of judging the public mood. Equally, we're quite capable of spotting wrecking amendments or anything else that would be designed just to derail the project. The point about a separate debate is that it allows everything to come together, a focused attention on just this matter. Some members of the government seem to be worried that that will cause mayhem. I don't agree. I don't think that shows much respect for what this assembly is capable of. I do suggest, in closing, sir, that if this proposition is passed, if the government loses, it won't be a big deal. Ministers will walk out of the door feeling a bit annoyed, shrug their shoulders, and get on with business. Because this is how it has always been done in the past. It is not asking for anything exceptional, anything extraordinary. This is still a huge capital project. We still have a job to do. It is easier to do that job if we are open and transparent, bringing all the information together in one debate and having one debate where all those issues are explained together in the full context of the government plan as the Treasury Minister would like it to be. All of that information can be abstracted and put into one place. It's there for us to do. It's part of our job, and I think we should do it. I call for the appel.
Thank you, Deputy. And you're inviting two separate votes on parts A and B of the proposition. Thank you, Deputy. Members are invited to return to their seats. And in respect of paragraph A of the proposition, I invite the greffier to open the voting. All members have the chance of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. So what's that? Announce that part A has been rejected, 13 votes for, 30 votes contra. Yes.
Those members voting for, the Connotab of St Clement and Deputies Ayer, Gardner, Moore, War, Miles, Renouf, Jearn, Alex Curtis, Wilson, Stevenson, Andrews and Doublé.
Yes, the contras too, I think. Yes.
And those members voting contre, the Connotab St Helier, St Brillard, Trinity, St Peter, St Martin, St John, Rouville, St Juan, St Saviour, and Deputies Southern, Labby, Luce, Morel, Lehigra, Rob Ward, Owls, Mesick, Balash, Coles, Scott, Catherine Curtis, Feltham, Rose Binet, Miller, Howell, Tombine, Berry, Kovac, Barbara Ward and Porre.
Now move to part B of the proposition. I invite the greffier to open the voting. All members have the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. I announce that part B has been rejected. 15 votes pour, 29 votes contre. Yes.
Those members voting pour the Conotable St Clement and deputies Ayer, Gardner, Moore, War, Miles, Renouf, Jeune, Kovac, Alex Curtis, Wilson, Stevenson, Andrews, Doublé and Ozuf. And those members voting contre the Conotable St Helier, St Brelard, Trinity, St Peter, St Martin, St John, Grouville, St Juan and St Saviour, and deputies Southern, Labby, Luce, Morel, Lahigara, Rob Ward, Alves, Mesick, Balash, Coles, Scott, Catherine Curtis, Feltham, Rose Binet, Miller, Howe, Tom Binet, Ferry, Barbara Ward and Porre.
Members should have been provided with a supplementary order paper in relation to the nomination of a member of the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. Are members content to take that business now? Thank you very much. Deputy Catherine Curtis, is it right that you have nominated Deputy Miles as a member of your panel?
Sir, I'd like to increase the panel by one and nominate Deputy Miles.
Thank you very much. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations? Accordingly, I declare Deputy Miles has been appointed as a member of that panel. That concludes public business, and I invite the Chair of PPC to propose the arrangement of public business for future meetings.
At the moment, there are only 3 items of amendments. Sorry, sir. At the moment, there are only 3 items of amendments listed for the next sitting on the 10th of September. P19 2024 minimum wage, P29 2024 draft statistics and census Jersey amendment law, and P41 2024 draft agricultural loans Jersey. I expect that there will be further propositions lodged before the next state sitting. With this in mind, the Assembly may well sit on September the 10th and the 11th. And as usual, please keep continuation days free to meet if needed. Sir, I propose the arrangement of business.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Are members content to now adjourn until 9:30 on the 10th of September? The Assembly is adjourned to that date.